Oh, okay. Sorry. I had to grab my laundry from my mom's bed. Okay. The thwap squealed and darted back into the garden. A moment later, they reappeared, one with a potato in its furry paws and the other with an armful of carrots. They dodged another swipe from Poto's club and shot into the garden again. Poto roared and swung his club above his head. A vast fowl, rodents! A gust of wind moved the garden leaves in waves. Poto's white hair flew out behind him, and he leaned into the breeze with a fierce set of his jaw. A thwap appeared from behind a sugarberry plant and threw another rock. Poto swung his club and sent the stone zipping into the garden as the thwaps dove for cover. Aha! A few moments passed, and the thwaps squeaked and twittered among themselves. Poto's face wrinkled even tighter. He lowered his club and cupped a hand over his ear, as if he could have understood them. Suddenly, a fat red potato whizzed through the air and burst on Poto's face. Not the potatoes! Poto blinked the juice from his eyes and batted another potato away with his club. Not my potatoes! Just as Lily turned away, she saw him dive into the garden head first, howling all the while. She smiled and limped back to the cottage, which was thick with the smell of breakfast. Nia tromped past her to the garden without a word, snatched 2 leaves from a rose pepper plant, and returned to the kitchen, ignoring Nugget's barking, Poto's howls of rage, and the thwaps sailing through the air. Janner, who had finally managed to clean the manure from his face and hair, walked back to the house dripping wet. Tink, skinny as a rake, sat at the table beside Lily. His eyes were fixed on the large pile of sausage sizzling on the stove, and the sound of his growling stomach filled the room. Well, that's better. Nia folded her arms and tried not to smile at Janner. I thought I'd see you with fresh grass growing on your face by now. Janner blushed and shook his head as he took his seat. Lily and Tink tried to hide their giggles as Nia pulled up a chair and sat with her elbows on the table and her chin in her hands, watching her children eat. Janner stared out the window deep in thought. Tink hunched over his plate like a buzzard, eating the hotcakes and sausage as if they might try to run away. Lily watched her brothers and fidgeted with the hem of her gown, humming and bobbing her head back and forth while she chewed. Eat well, my dears. It's going to be a busy day, Nia said, smiling. The children's eyes widened. The sea dragons, they cried in unison. Nia laughed and pushed herself up from the table. The summer dusk hath split in twain the gilded summer moon, and all who come shall hear again the dragon's golden tune, she sang, coming just like they have for thousands of years. Finish up your breakfast and we'll go into town. The chores will wait. With a loud crash, the back door burst open, and there stood Poto, drenched with sweat and out of breath. Thwaps, he bellowed, holding out a sack with something squirming and screeching inside. Poto smacked it with his club, and squealing promptly stopped. Nugget yipped and danced at his feet, nipping at the sack. There are 2 more of the little stinkers out there, but these 3, he shook the sack, won't be munching on any more of our vegetables, I tell you. Lousy, thieving little thwap. He noticed his 3 grandchildren and daughter watching him and cleared his throat. Don't worry now. I'll be tossing them off the cliff, straight into the dark sea, after I eat a few of your fine hotcakes, honey. He nodded to Nia, trying to sound less gruff. Nia's mouth dropped open. How could you throw them in the sea? Poto scratched his head. Easy. See, I take the sack here and I dump it out over the cliff. Simple as that. Lily sat with her fork in her hand and a look of horror on her face. Grandpa, you can't just kill them. She pushed back from the table as the boys rolled their eyes. She hobbled on her crutch to her towering grandfather and looked up at him with pitiful sweetness in her eyes. Poto loved his little granddaughter like nothing else in Airwear, and she knew it. They're such sweet little things, Grandpa, and they never harm anyone. Poto sputtered and pointed to the scratches on his arm. Lily didn't seem to notice. And all they take is a few of our vegetables each year to feed their baby thwaplings. I can't believe that you would do such a thing. Please, Grandpa, don't kill the little fuzzies. She grabbed his shirt, pulled his face to hers, and kissed him on his grizzled cheek. Come on, Nugget, she said, and she left the kitchen. The sack squealed, and Poto smacked it again, but with less vigor. With a grunt, Poto plopped the sack on the floor beside the table and shoveled a hot cake into his mouth. Now, Janner, lad, Poto said without looking up from his plate. It can get rowdy out there with the festivities going on, and you know the fangs get even meaner when it looks like we Screans are having a grand time of it. Yes, sir. Jenner looked down at his place and clenched the sides of his chair, bracing himself for what he knew was coming. And you're the oldest, which bears a noble responsibility. It means that I have to keep an eye on Tink and Lily and make sure they get home safely. I've heard the same thing every day of my life, and I'm not stupid. Jenner surprised even himself. His cheeks reddened when he saw the look of shock on his mother's face. He knew he had gone too far. But it was too late to turn back. Years of frustration decided to explode over hotcakes that very morning. What it means is that I'm a nanny. I never get to do anything I want to do. Tink snorted and tried to hide his laughter by shoving another large bite in his mouth. Jenner kicked him under the table, which only made Tink snort again. I don't want to spend my life fretting over Tink and Lily, following two little kids around, fussing over them like an old woman and wasting my life. Son, Poto started, I'm not your son, you're not my father, and if my father were alive, he'd understand. Jenner already hated himself for what he had said. He was breathing hard and staring at the stove and afraid to look at his grandfather's face. His chest felt hot and tears were coming. He put a hand in his pocket and squeezed the folded drawing of his father like never before. He wished that he were on the boat out on the dark sea of darkness, far away from Glipwood and from the way he felt right now. Poto chewed and swallowed his hot cake slowly, considering his grandson in heavy silence. Tink. I know, I was so annoyed they took it out. I was like, this is central to the plot, guys. Tink, clear your plate and go get dressed, laddie, he said without taking his eyes off Jenner. Nia stood by the stove, looking at the floor with her hands on her hips. The grizzled old man wiped his mouth with a napkin and gripped the sides of the table with his big hands. Jenner was in trouble. He knew it. Chapter 4. A stranger named Esben. The door swung shut behind Tink as Nia pulled up a chair between Poto and Jenner. Lad, do you know I love you, said Poto. Jenner nodded, then added, Yes, sir. I know I'm not your father. He was a good man, a brave man. He fought well and died well in the Great War, and it's my duty to raise you children as near as I can see what your father would want. Jenner stole a glance at his mother. She fought back tears as she stood and busied herself with clearing the plates from the table. Now, lad, you're getting long of leg and your voice is getting thicker. I expect you figure you're nearing manhood, do ye? Poto looked at Jenner with one white bushy eyebrow cocked up and the other eye squinting at him. Speak up, lad. Well, I'm 12. I know that's not old, but he broke off, unable to think of what to say. Sometimes you feel like your brother and sister might weigh you down like an anchor, is that? Sometimes you feel like this little town's too small for the notions in your head. Jenner stared at his hands with a deep breath. He pulled the picture from his pocket. Nia stopped her cleaning as Jenner unfolded the picture and spread it flat on the table. He could hold his tears back no longer, and they dripped from the edge of his nose onto the picture, mingling with the spray of the sea. Nia hugged Jenner to her chest and smoothed his hair for a long time. I wondered where that picture had gotten to. It's him? Nia nodded slowly. Yes. And he drew it. Yes. Nia dabbed the tears from the picture with her apron. That was a different time, a different world. She was quiet a long moment. Before the fangs, your father would want nothing more than for you to sail your own seas, and one day you will. But if he were here, he would tell you the same thing your grandfather's telling you. I know. This is literally one of my favorite scenes in book 1. There's time to sail, and there's this time to stay put. Laddie, I understand more than you know. Poto's voice was softer, but hear me. I was there when your pa died. I didn't see it, but I was there all the same. Jenner looked up sharply. You were there? What happened? Papa, no, Nia said. It's time you knew something of where he's from, lass. Poto pointed at the drawing, then at Jenner. Look at him, he's the spitting image. I don't see what that has to do with anything. Raising Esben's memory from the dead will do no good. No good. Nia's voice trembled. Jenner hated seeing his mother so upset, but desperately wanted to hear more. His name was Esben? Jenner hoped to keep Poto talking. Poto and Nia looked at him with sad eyes. Nia kissed Jenner's hair. No more. Please, she said to Poto and left the room. Jenner was silent. Poto was silent. The thwaps in the bag were silent. Finally, Poto cleared his throat. Well, you must trust me. I see your father in you. He was a great man. He fought for us. Died fighting for us. Your wee sister and brother are treasures, same as you, and we wouldn't have our treasures lost. The old man leaned forward and lowered his voice. Blood was shed that you three might breathe the good air of life. And if that means you have to miss out on a Zipsy game, then so be it. Part of being a man is putting others' needs before your own. Jitter thought of Tink and Lily. The idea of always having to look out for them still galled him, but he did love them. He wanted to be a good, brave man like his father. Whose name he had just heard for the first time. Yes, sir, I'll try, he said, not quite able to meet Poto's eyes. Janner folded up the picture and looked at Poto questioningly. Poto gave his permission with a nod, and Janner placed the picture back in his pocket with care. So, lad, since you're so old now, why don't you and your brother and sister head over to the festival without your mother and me for a while? We still have some chores to mind. You're in charge. But Mama said that Lily couldn't... Poto laughed. I'll see to your mother. Just keep your sister close. Your mother and I'll be along directly. Can you handle that? Yes, sir, Janner said, suddenly unsure that he could. Poto clapped his hand on the table. Right then. Now, there's something I need you to do for me before you three head out to the festival. He handed the sack of thwaps to Janner and lowered his voice. Would you mind dumping these stinkers over the cliff for your dear Poto? Janner's eyes widened. What? Oh, I'm fooling, Poto said with disappointment. I couldn't do that after Lily's little performance. Poto reached into his pocket and handed Janner 3 grayish coins. He took another bite of his hotcakes, swallowed, and burped. Buy yourself some munches. Okay. Let's see how long is left in this. Okay, we're going to read one more chapter. This is chapter 5, The Bookseller, the Sock Man, and the Glipwood Township. The Igby children raced across the cottage lawn though that was only as fast as Lily could hobble. I can't speak. Janner resisted the urge to offer her his help. He had learned long ago that his little sister was capable of getting around on her own, and that if she wanted help, she'd ask for it. He also knew that while she was fiercely independent, she fiercely wanted them to wait for her. Even with a crippled leg, Lily was remarkably fast, and her brothers moved at a trot as they wound down the shady lane that led to the town of Glipwood. Nugget padded along beside Lily, wagging his tail, and if the Igby children had tails, they would have wagged too. They could already hear the... I'm sorry, I just got a thought. I'm sorry. And if the Igby children had tails, they would have wagged too. They could already hear the uncommon sound of laughter from the direction of town, and wisps of happy music lifted over the top of the oaks. I was just thinking about how after Kalmar, in book 2, after Kalmar gets spanked. I'm sorry. Janner suddenly felt pleased to be entrusted with the care of both his younger siblings. He laughed at how quickly his feelings had changed. Only minutes ago he felt chained down by the responsibility. Now he's proud of it. Going to town alone with Tink and Lily was a far song from sailing alone in the open sea like his father, but it would have to do. Janner wondered what his friend, old Oscar and Retief at the bookstore would say when he saw the Igbys with no parents in sight. Would Oscar give him more work in the store, or let him take home more books? Maybe he'd finally allow Janner to read the books reserved only for older folks, the thick ones on the top shelves with the ancient bindings. He smiled to himself. Responsibility might not be so bad after all. So what happened back there? Tink asked as they jogged down the lane. Nothing. What do you mean, nothing? Tink sounded disappointed. No spanking? No spanking. So when you're 12, you can be a stinker and not get whomped? It's complicated, Janner said, thinking again of his father. He wondered when he'd show Tink and Lily the picture. I can't wait to be 12. Tink grinned deviously as they rounded the corner on Main Street. Yes. Janner smiled back at his brother, but instead he was troubled. Esben Igby, he thought. Knowing his father's name made Janner think of him as a real person, not just as a happy shadow from his dreams. Many days he didn't think much about him, but whenever the other children in Glipwood spoke of their fathers, or when they asked Janner why he lived with his old grandfather, he felt like an oddity. He knew that Lily and Tink felt it too. Everyone else in Glipwood had grown up there, or somewhere nearby, but whenever Janner asked Poto and Nia where they had come from, the answer was always silence. All he knew was that Poto had grown up in the cottage, and that his great-great-great-great-grandparents, Janner's great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents, had built the cottage 200 years earlier when Glipwood was little more than a cluster of buildings. Now Glipwood had one main street with several buildings on either side. Shaggy's Tavern stood on the left. I can't wait to be 12. We'll see about that. Its dark green shingle bearing a picture of a dog with a pipe hanging from its mouth. Beside it was the biggest building in town, Glipwood's Only Inn. The sign read, "The Only Inn," at the top, and below that in small letters, Glipwood's Only Inn. The Schusters, a kindly old couple, kept the inn warm and clean, and the smells that floated out of the kitchen made the whole township hungry. Across the street was a barber shop called Jaybird's, where Mr. Bird usually could be seen sleeping in one of his chairs. Next to the barber shop squatted the town jail, where Fangs lounged on the stoop and hurled insults at passers-by. The VeggieTales reference? Wide, mossy oak trees stretched their boughs over the streets, offering welcome shade from the summer sun. Children with sticky faces straddled high limbs, munching on various desserts. Everywhere Janner looked were men and women of different shapes and sizes. The women wore long, flowing, brightly colored gowns, and the men who strolled beside them puffed pipes and sported silly round-top hats. Occasionally, a horse-drawn carriage would squeak by, its occupants peeking smugly out the window. Janner, Tink, and Lily, with Nugget by her side, made their way through town, past the inn, always full this time of year, being Glipwood's only inn, past Veronicaa's flower shop, and the old rickety building that housed books and crannies. A sign hung from the window. Oscar and Retiep, proprietor, bookseller, intellectual appreciator of the neat, the strange, and or the yummy. Oscar Retiep's a round man with a short white beard and very little hair on top of his head, waved at them from his front porch where he sat in a rocking chair puffing on a long pipe. He had combed long wisps of hair over his freckled brown egg of a head in a vain attempt to hide the fact that he was bald. The breeze was stirring a long tendril of hair about as if it were waving at the children. "Ho there, Janner," he called, smiling and beckoning up to the children. "Hello, Mr. Retiep," Janner hollered over the noise of the crowd. From the window behind Oscar, a little man with pointed ears watched them. Zuzab Coit was a ridge runner, whom Oscar had adopted 6 years earlier upon opening a crate that was supposed to have been full of books from Torboro. Instead, Oscar had been shocked to find a starving, frightened Zuzab cowering inside. "No one likes you, Zuzab." I'm just kidding, sorry. We like Zuzab. Ridge runners were little people and little known in Scree, but Oscar, a self-proclaimed appreciator of the neat, the strange, and or the yummy, decided that Zuzab was certainly qualified. Zuzab's descriptions of his homeland and harrowing life in the Kilridge Mountains were very neat, as were his stubbly hair and pointed features. His dress and behavior were quite strange. He wore leather breeches and a patchwork shirt of many colors that billowed around him like 100 tiny flags. Strangest of all, he couldn't help climbing on everything taller than himself. I know. He's an elf, literally. Strangest of all, he couldn't help climbing on everything taller than himself, which was most things. As for his being yummy, Oscar didn't care to speculate. Janner thought how they looked rather silly together, Oscar round as a pumpkin, and Zuzab short and thin as a shornweed. Whatever that is. Lily waved at Zuzab. His beady eyes widened and he ducked out of sight. "Where's Poto?" Oscar asked, wiping his glasses on his vest. Janner tried to sound nonchalant. Nonchalant dreadhead. "Back at the cottage. Said we could come alone today." "Aho!" Oscar eyed Janner through the spectacles perched on the end of his nose. Janner beamed. "Come bright and early day after tomorrow, eh? I found an absolute trove of books on my last trip to Dugtown. I'll need help loading them in." "Yes, sir, I'll be there." Janner began to think of all the books he would read next. Oscar squinted one eye at Tink and looked him up and down. "And bring that skin and bones brother of yours, too. We could use the extra hand. And by the looks of it, he could use the exercise." Tink's eyes widened. "Really, Mr. Retiep?" "That's right, lad." Oscar smiled down at Lily. "What do you think of all this fuss, lass? Glipwood is different town for a day, isn't it?" Lily looked around at the folk milling past them, taking in the sights, sounds, and smells that were so foreign in the sleepy little township. She smiled. "Oh, thank you. Hi. Right now, this is chapter 5. So, we're about halfway through, I think. She smiled. I like it, but after a day of it, I'll be glad when things are back to normal. Janner rolled his eyes. Well, I wish Glipwood was like this every day. I wish the only inn was always full of travelers and merchants with news from Torbro and Fort Lamdrin, or tales from explorers who have gone beyond the edges of the maps. Did you ever think about the fact that there might be whole continents that no one from Scree has ever seen? That no one anywhere has ever seen? We've never even been to Fort Lamdrin, and POTUS says it's only a day's ride from here. All these rich people from Dugtown and Torbro get to really see ere we are, not just shovel hay all day. There literally is. Oscar raised his eyebrows at Janner, whose speech trailed off at the quizzical reaction of his friend. Oscar then wiped his brow and pressed the single waving lock of Retipe hair back to his forehead. So Glipwood is too small for Janner. What say you, young Tink? Tink sniffed the air. I want some sugarberry pie. Janner, Oscar said, there's more to the world than just seeing it. If you can't find peace here in Glipwood, you won't find it anywhere. Oscar gestured at a carriage rolling by. These folks may appear wealthy, but no one here really is anymore. If you look close enough, you'll see the suits and dresses these so real callous, so relatable. These so-called rich folks are wearing are tattered and patched. No earrings or necklaces adorn the women. No rings sparkle on the men's fingers. Janner saw that it was true. Why hadn't he ever noticed that before? Annoyed, he nodded to Oscar and toed at the dirt. It was his day to be corrected by grown-ups. Lad, it's one thing to be poor in pocket. Nothing wrong with that. But poor in heart, that's no good. Oh, hi, Blanche. Hello. I'm reading chapter 5. Wait, where was I? Look at them. They're sad in the eyes, and it's a sadness no amount of money could repair. Why, they hardly remember what it's like to laugh from the belly anymore. But they seem to be happy, Mr. Archetype, don't they? We could hear the laughter and music from up the lane, Lily said. People come to Glipwood to see the dragons because it's one of the only freedoms they have left. Sure, they sleep under their own roofs with their own families, and broken though it is, it's still their own land. But this is a far fling from freedom, young Igabys. Some of us still remember what it was like to stroll through town after dark, or to ride a horse through the forest without fear. Oscar's voice grew angry, and it seemed to Janner that he was no longer talking to them, but himself. It's beginning to feel like the Fangs have always been here, and that Nag the Nameless has always ruled us, taxed us, and stolen our young. Oh my goodness. Janner looked at the half-smiles on the people's faces. He saw the way the people cowered away from the sneering Fangs on the jail stoop. There was sorrow underneath all the merriment, and for the first time, Janner was old enough to feel it. I know, why is Oscar, why are you mad? Oscar came back to himself and smiled at the children. Ah, but it's a fine day, is it not? Igaby, children. There's a time to think hard and there's a time to ease up. Now you run along, as the great thumb of the Hong Meadow wisely wrote. The games are starting soon enough. Oscar waved them on with a wink while he puffed his pipe and palmed his hair back to his bald pate. With somber hearts, the children made their way down the crowded street. Janner was deep in thought, staring hard at Commander Norm, the fattest and meanest Fang in Glipwood. Norm's feet were propped up on an old stump, and he was gnawing the meat from a hen bone, his long purple tongue slurping noisily. Ugh. Norm hurled the bone at an old man walking by, and the Fang soldiers hissed and laughed as the man bowed and wiped the grease from his face. Janner found it hard to believe that there was a day where no one in Scree had ever heard of the Fangs of Dank. Past the jail, in front of the little building that housed the printing press, a cluster of people stood in a circle, laughing at someone. Above the heads of the onlookers, 2 ragged boots were kicking around in the air. Janner and Tink grinned at one another. Here's a picture. Anyways. And, yeah, there's Pete. That's all. Oh, it's a Fang. He's disgusting. He's awful. I love the artwork in this book. The best artwork. Pete the Sock Man, Tink pointed and took off running. Come on, Lily, let's see what he's up to. They pushed through the crowd and saw the strange fellow walking on his hands in the middle of the circle. He was chanting the phrases, wings and dings and purple things, over and over, kicking his feet to the rhythm. His cheeks were sunken, his eyes were shadowed, and the creases around them gave him the look of having just finished crying. He wore ragged clothes and was filthy, as were the dingy knitted stockings he wore on his arms up past his elbows. Onlookers tossed coins, but to the residents of Glipwood, this was normal behavior for Pete. Earlier that summer, in fact, Pete crashed into the street sign at the corner of Main and Vibley Way, which was quite innocent as it was standing still and in plain sight. After insulting the sign's mother, "Your mother bakes mediocre pies," Pete challenged it to a contest, though it quite stoically showed no sign of retaliation. He took his hard swipe at it, missed, spun in a circle like a circus dancer from Dugtown, and collapsed into the dirt, where he snored noisily all that night. Jenner applauded with the crowd as Pete flipped back onto his feet and adjusted his hair with a flourish. And skipped away with one eye closed and one sock hand in his mouth, leaving the coins in the dust. Jenner grinned after Pete, whose bushy head bounced up the dusty street and around the corner. "And he's gone," Jenner said. "Do you think it's true that he lives up near the old forest?" Tink asked. Jenner shrugged. "He'd have to be crazy to live there." In the years before the war, rangers and trappers braved the forest and tamed the deadly beast that prowled within it. But the Fangs had taken every weapon in the land, every sword and shield, every bow and arrow, every dagger and spear, every farm tool that could be used as a weapon was locked away and guarded. Oh, there's a little side note at the bottom. In order for Poto to hoe the garden, he had to fill out the permission to hoe garden form. Then the permission to use hoe form to borrow the hoe. If the tool wasn't returned by sundown, the penalty was much too severe to be mentioned in this happy part of the story. Well, if anybody's crazy enough to go to the forest, it's Pete. Tink paused. The Blackest boys said that they saw him up. Me too. Oh my gosh, they're so fun. The Blackest boys said they saw him up by the forest riding a toothy cow like it was a horse, whipping its rear end with a switch. They said he was singing a ballad. Jenner snorted. "No way. Nobody could survive a toothy cow. Besides, the Blackest boys are too jumpy to go anywhere near the forest. They're pulling your strings." Jenner turned to go. "Come on." But he stopped in his tracks and grabbed his brother's arm. He couldn't see Lily. His head whipped to and fro, scanning the crowded street. "Where's Lily?" he cried. "Lily!" Tink tapped him on the shoulder. Jenner whirled around to find his brother pointing to the ground at Jenner's feet. Lily was sitting there, scratching Nugget's belly, looking up at him innocently. He sighed and felt his insides quiver with relief. In the space of a few seconds, he had envisioned Lily lost or hurt, and he felt a tinge of painful guilt he'd bear He felt a tinge of the painful guilt he'd bear if something ever actually happened to her. But nothing ever does, he thought bitterly. Here we are at the Dragon Day Festival, and I'm a nervous mess since the minute we arrived. Over nothing at all. What could possibly happen in just a few seconds? The end. Well, on that note... Okay, so next chapter will be A Bard at Dunn's Green. So, a lot has happened this chapter from the first few chapters. And yeah, so we got artwork, beautiful artwork. I need to stop pointing out foreshadowings. Like, I'm going to spoil the whole thing for people. I guess there's pretty much nobody on here, but still, in the future, I need to stop. But I was literally like, the whole time I was like, oh my gosh. Anyways, so we're going off to a great start. We're actually making good progress, as you can see. We've only done 2 days and we're already on chapter 6. I imagine we'll finish this book by the end of January. And we're only on January 22nd. So thank you guys so much for listening, especially you, Hannah. Thank you so much. It's so fun reading this with somebody. So, yeah, we will leave off at chapter 6 tomorrow. Most likely, what is tomorrow? Hopefully 5:30. We'll see, okay? But I will make a post announcing exactly when I'm going live, and please tell your friends to join, and anybody who hasn't read it. Thank you so much for joining my live. I love you all, and yeah, so we will leave off tomorrow. Bye-bye.